when I was deciding to do my speech, I didn't know what to do it about, but I decided to, like my last speech, lead on to my persuasive speech. And so in this speech, I'm going to talk about Milestone Comics and the history of it. So it started as an idea that no one thought would come to pass, especially with the company that they tried to present it to, which was DC Comics, and that's a part of the big two comic book industries. You have DC and you have Marvel Comics, and those are the comic companies that just about everyone knows, even if you don't read comic books. So Milestone was created by 4 people by the name of Dwayne McGuffey, Dennis Cohen, Derek Dingle, and Michael Davis. It was unheard of for black creators to make this big of a deal, and from a quote, they sold just as many books or more than every black comic company releasing content at the time combined. It was met with several advantages and disadvantages. Many of the advantages were it was marketed by one of the big two. They had the opportunity to get appeal from an audience that wasn't targeted by other publishers, which were minorities, especially at that time. They had several critically acclaimed creators. Most of the people who started Milestone Comics and worked for Milestone Comics worked at Marvel or DC. And they used a coloring process that gave their books a very distinctive and unique look. A large number of the retailers and customers, though, thought that there would be comics just for blacks, and they assumed that no one would be interested in it outside of the African American community. So they usually hid the books somewhere where, most people couldn't find them. They received limited exposure beyond existing comic shops. Also, since the coloring process was so unique and different, it cost a little bit more, so the price of the covers cost just a little bit more, because how comics worked way back when in the early 19-something, they used to cost 25 cents, but as time goes, it gets higher and higher. So the more unique or the more different a coloring process is, the more money it costs to sell it and costs to make it. In the 90s, there was this big boom of new universes, of different comic book universes outside Marvel and DC. So it was hard for these comics like Milestone to sell. So comics reached a sales peak that soon dropped, and there was just a glut of new universes. Milestone had a lot of controversy surrounding it. The people over Milestone, it was very different from other comic companies. They had complete editorial control with copyrights and merchandising. This allowed them to tell stories that weren't told by the big companies like Marvel and DC. And they were criticized by several other black independent creators and companies who said that Milestone Media was compromising itself by working with a white company like DC Comics and being used by DC to undermine independent black companies. DC instead had limited rights to the characters and their editorial works and creative content. It's noted that DC Comics officials were uncomfortable with Milestone's storyline arcs in their books, but because of the deal they signed and the accomplishments of the company's founders in the comic book mainstream, almost all the issues that were wrote saw the light of day. Of course, their sales dropped, and in 1997 they closed. A lot of this had to do with their storylines that put the final nail in the coffin. An issue of Static Shock showed Static Shock kissing his girlfriend on the bed with unopened condoms in sight on the cover. Milestone had to black most of that cover out because DC Comics thought that it was promoting sex to sell comics. But the late Dwayne McGuffey, who was a founder of Milestone Comics, he said DC was uncomfortable with it because it was specifically black sexuality. Take that as you will. The characters that were created and impacted readers and non-readers alike. This is kind of small, you probably can't see it here. You have 4 different comic books created by Milestone. You have Hardware, he was like a black version of Iron Man. Icon, he was like Superman. Although it was called Icon, he has his sidekick here. Her name is Rocket. She was actually the main character of the book. You have the Blood Syndicate. They were like an Avengers team. So you had several different people on that team, and you had Static Shock, which Static Shock was the most famous out of them all, and eventually got his own television series. And many of the creators and readers that read Milestone cite one or more of the company's comic book properties as inspiration in one way or another. All of these different comic books dealt with different things that sometimes were controversial. In the book Icon, the character Rocket was 14 years old and she became pregnant and was thinking about having an abortion, but she decided not to, and she became the first unwed mother in the history of comics. And Icon also talked about conflicts between upper class and lower class minorities, and addressed conservative and liberal politics among African Americans. Meanwhile, Static Shock addressed going through racism as an African American teen. Milestone Comics is coming back later this year, and I hope this has encouraged you all to actually try to read one of these series. They have a ton of them, so I hope that encouraged you to actually get to know these characters and learn more about the comic book industry and what this comic company did for it as well.